helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformations with Michael Hart, Canadian certified counselor and award-winning psychotherapist.
Welcome back to the Life Transformation Show, where every episode is a journey toward personal growth. Today's topic is Lessons in Couples Communication, Part 1. As we shine the spotlight on couples communication using the biblical couple of Isaac and Rebecca as a launchpad to go into this important discussion. I'm your co-host, Denise Hart, and joining me is the insightful Michael Hart, ready to unpack valuable lessons from this timeless tale. So whether you are experiencing financial problems, intimacy issues, in-laws issues, trust issues, or any other issue in your relationship, communication is the key to finding a solution. Not only is communication a crucial part of the solution, but without communication, issues become worse, placing the relationship at risk for divorce or other unwanted consequences. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Denise, for that wonderful introduction. And this is such a very important topic for me as a psychotherapist, because I see many couples where their relationship fall apart for the simple issue that they do not know how to communicate. And what I have experienced over the years is that as I teach people how to communicate and to talk about the problems in their marriage, their relationship gets better. And I have seen where many relationships that were on the brink of divorce were saved because people learned how to communicate. So today in this show, we'll be talking about tips that could actually save your relationship.
Well, Michael, I'm sure the listeners are waiting on their edge of their seat to hear what you will have to say. So let's get right into it. Why don't you start by telling us what is the communication difficulty in the relationship between Isaac and Rebecca?
That's a very good place to start, Denise. And when we look at Genesis chapter 25, verse 19 to 26, and the other surrounding scriptures, we find that the couple, Isaac and Rebecca, had competing visions as to what would take place in their family. So we see that Isaac, holding to cultural and religious norms of his time, believed that the firstborn son, Esau, should receive the birthright and the blessing. This blessing was traditionally bestowed upon the eldest child in the family. And so, based on the fact that Esau was the firstborn, Isaac held the traditional belief that the inheritance of the family would go to him and that he would be the ruler over the family. On the other hand, we see that Rebecca had received a dream from God, a vision from God, or in answer to her prayer, where God showed her that the younger child would rule over the older. In other words, she held a vision that the younger child, Jacob, would receive the inheritance. And so we have from the very birth of these two boys that there were competing visions that were never discussed by the couple. There was no clear description as to what it is that they held to be the future of their family. So what we find instead is that this competing vision and the fact that there was no communication to each other about what they believe should happen in the family created a lot of stress and division in the family. So this failure to communicate their competing vision for the family resulted in deception, resulted in mistrust, resulted in resentment, as Isaac probably felt betrayed by his wife Rebecca when she set up Jacob to steal the birthright of Esau. So this is what happened when there is not clear communication. The family begins to unravel and things begin to fall apart.
I can certainly understand that, Michael, because miscommunication can cause all those problems. So I guess I can hear what you're saying is that they were not on the same page and was pulling in opposite direction while at the same time trying to raise a family. So can you talk a little bit about what competing vision may look like in a couple's relationship and why effective communication is crucial in those circumstances?
So some of the things that I find in a current day relationship where competing visions occur is, for example, how to raise the family. One spouse may have been from a household where they were raised with very strict authoritarian parents. And the other spouse may have been raised in very permissive household where anything goes, where the children had no rules to follow. And each come into the marriage with an idea that the family should be raised based on how they were brought up. And as a result of that, if there is no clear communication about how we're going to discipline our family and how we would like our family to be raised, then this creates conflict and discord. Another area where I see competing vision is in the area of spirituality. And this is very common in Christian marriages. Just because someone goes to the same church as you do or belong to the same religion doesn't mean that you have the same vision spiritually for your family. One person might be quite okay to miss church on Sunday and to go golfing with the family, whereas the other person might believe that Sunday is sacred and that we need to be in the house of God. And so they have different visions as to how they should spend the weekend, what should happen on a Sunday. And if there is no clear communication about this, what is our vision for our family, then what will happen? You will have a situation where they begin to pull against each other. So when there is no clear communication and competing vision, there is conflict and discord, as we see in the story of Isaac and Rebekah.
As you were speaking, Michael, this came to mind that, in any relationship, couples could have a clear mission statement so that they know where they want to take the relationship and where they want to take their family. So on that, what else do you see in the dynamic between Isaac and Rebekah?
Another thing that we see there, that there is a lack of compromise. So we have these two individuals in a relationship where they have competing vision and they're not talking about it. And as a result of that, they can see that they're pulling in opposite direction, but no one is willing to compromise. One of the importance of communication is that as a couple learns to communicate, they can talk about their vision, they can talk about why it's important, and they can look at ways in which they can compromise to make the relationship work for both of them. But in the story of Isaac and Rebekah, there was no compromise. Another thing that we see too is that there was manipulation instead of discussion. After Rebekah had deceived Esau of his birthright and deceived her husband Isaac, what she did was to become very emotional over a very unrelated issue as a way of manipulating her husband to send Jacob away. So what she said, or to justify why Jacob was leaving. So in Genesis 27:46, we read, Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living. And I can just imagine that she's crying as she's saying this and getting all emotional, but it was all just manipulation because she knew what she was doing and she knew that she wanted Jacob to leave for his uncle Laban. Another thing that I see too is that when there is no communication, people tend to triangulate. In other words, because there is a void in communication, one or both of the partners will triangulate with someone else. So instead of it being just two people who are emotionally bonded, there is a third person needed to support the lack of bonding and emotional intimacy between the partners. And so in the case of Isaac and Rebekah, what we found, what we saw happening there is that Isaac became bonded with Esau. He triangulated with Esau. So instead of the bond being between he and his wife, you add Isaac, Rebekah, and Esau. On the other hand, Rebekah was triangulated with Jacob. So you have that other triangle of Jacob, Isaac, and Rebekah. And so both partners were triangulated. And one of the other things that we find that happen in scenarios like these, when people are not communicating, when they are not talking, then there is anger that's building up. There is resentment that's building up. And oftentimes this results in displaced emotions. And so in that passage that I read earlier about Genesis 27:46, another way you could look at that rant by Rebekah as she's talking about the Hittite woman is that she is placing her anger and her frustration on the circumstances in the family, on the woman, on the Hittite woman, instead of dealing with the problem. So all of this that we have just talked about is what happens when there is not clear and effective communication in a couple's relationship.
So clearly, Michael, there was a breakdown in communication. And when that happened, in this case with Isaac and Rebekah, they failed to openly discuss and reconcile their competing visions for their family. So instead of engaging in dialogue and seeking understanding, they resort to secretive actions and deception, with Rebekah orchestrating a plan to ensure that Jacob receives the blessings intended for the firstborn.
Absolutely. That's exactly what played out. And we see that this led to severe consequences, Dennis, because what ended up happening is that there was this now conflict between the brothers where Esau wanted to kill Jacob, and the separation of the family happened because now Jacob had to escape to a faraway land to live with his uncle Laban. And when he was leaving and his mother Rebekah was planning with him as to where he should go and how long he should stay there, she said to him, go there and stay for a little while until your brother's anger subside, and then I will call for you to come back. But what we read in the book of Genesis is that Jacob was with his uncle Laban for 20 years. So he was separated because of lack of communication for 20 years. And that paints a picture of how important communication is. Because of this lack of communication, the family was destroyed. And the sad reality is that Rebekah, who orchestrated all of this, as you rightfully pointed out, Denise, never saw her son Jacob again. Because by the time Jacob came back from his uncle Laban, she was deceased. And so she greatly underestimated the severity of what this lack of communication or the impact it was going to have on her relationship.
So we have discussed the mistakes and consequences of lack of communication. So let's now look at some strategies to communicate more effectively in relationships.
That's a good way to transition into the next section, Denise. And I think now one of the first thing that I think we need to have in our communication is open and honest communication. We see that was lacking in the story of Isaac and Rebecca. The couples weren't talking about their issues. So couples should prioritize open and honest communication, sharing their thoughts, their feelings, and concerns with each other openly. If Isaac and Rebecca had done that, then their family would not have unraveled the way that it did. So this calls for vulnerability to the other person. This calls for you to be open and vulnerable to the other person, and for you to be transparent about what it is that your vision is and what it is that may be causing you pain in the relationship. But as you do so, you should keep in mind that you should approach the issues calmly.
Michael will be right back. You have been listening to the Life Transformation Show, where award-winning psychotherapist Michael Hart of ElimCounselling Services has been speaking on the topic Lessons in Couples Communication, Part 1. You can find out more about us at ElimCounselingMinistry.com, where you can also make a donation to this Christ-centered ministry. Your donations help us to stay on the air and to provide subsidized counseling to those who can't afford it. Back to Michael.
The mistakes that we often make in marriages and in romantic relationships is that we wait until we are frustrated, till resentment builds, until we can't deal with the pain of what we're feeling anymore, and then we explode in anger. But a better strategy is to not wait until you're feeling those emotions, but to approach the situation calmly and to talk about what is going on. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered person stirs up strife and conflict. And so it's important to remember that you should approach the issues calmly. And so another strategy is to practice non-defensive communication. When receiving feedback or criticism from your partner, practice listening instead of becoming defensive or dismissive. Instead of reacting emotionally, take a moment, pause, breathe, and reflect on what your partner is saying and acknowledge their perspective before you respond to what they're saying.
So these two scriptures will describe non-defensive communication. Proverbs 17:27. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. And the next scripture is James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So let us role play what is non-defensive communication, Michael.
That's a very good idea, Denise. But what I'm going to do is start first by doing it the defensive way so people can see what defensive communication looks like. And then I'm going to do the proper way of non-defensive communication, which is the way you want to react to your partner. So, Denise, why don't you raise an issue as we try to illustrate this?
Well, Michael, I'm really feeling like you don't care about me. Especially when you're spending so much time on the phone when we're together.
Well, what do you want me to do? It seems as if you're always blaming me for something. You know that I have to work to earn a living, and the phone is what I use to do my work. So why is it that you're always complaining? Okay, so there you have it. That is the defensive communication. So now raise the same issue, and we're going to do the non-defensive form of communication.
So, Michael, I really feel like you don't care about me because you're always on the phone when we're together.
I hear you, and I'm sorry if it seems like I am not paying enough attention. You know what? I'll make an effort to be more present and to put my phone away when we are spending time together. Denise, I just want you to know that your feelings are important to me, and I want us to feel connected. So there you have it. That's non-defensive communication. So couples should practice non-defensive communication. And the other thing that you should practice is active listening. Active listening is more than just listening. It means body language. You shouldn't be flicking the remote while someone is raising an important issue. You shouldn't be looking on the screen and looking as if you're distracted. Make eye contact. Give your undivided attention. But it's also important how you respond after listening. A lot of us, we listen like we are lawyers. So we listen to what our partner is saying and we try to pick it apart. What is that one fact in what they're saying that is not accurate? You said that the last time we were intimate is 6 weeks away, but you are wrong. It's actually 4 weeks and 3 days. I have it here in my calendar and I can show you. And so that's how a lawyer would listen to a situation. They're picking the facts apart. But instead of listening like a lawyer, I think we should listen like lovers. Listen with the heart of a lover so that you can hear the pain behind what your partner is saying and respond to their heart feelings instead of responding with hard, cold facts.
So a scripture that comes to mind, Michael, is Proverbs 18, verse 13. To answer before listening, that is folly and shame. You know, I guess this passage is saying that we should listen with a heart of love instead of trying to dismiss or shame the other person.
Absolutely, because when we pour out our heart and we tell what is really causing us pain, like in the role play that we did, you are explaining that you feel as if we're not spending quality time together. And if I respond with defensive means to that concern of yours, what I am doing is dismissing your hurt, dismissing your pain, causing it even to feel shame, as the Bible says, about what you have raised. And the sad thing is that we often do that to people we love. We dismiss what they're saying and make them seem as if there is something wrong with them for bringing up those concerns.
That is so true, Michael. So what other strategies you would like to discuss for couples to have better communication?
I may have touched on this indirectly, but I think it's worth a heading on its own. And that's the importance of practicing empathy and understanding. Couples should strive to empathize with each other's experiences and emotions. Couples should seek to understand their partner's point of view, even if they disagree. It's important to note that you don't have to agree with a person's position to show empathy to what they're feeling. And so, without empathy, we often feel dismissed. We feel as if we are not heard. We feel as if our partner doesn't care. But with empathy, when we empathize with the other person's position, we help them to feel as if we care, as if they have their point of view is valid. And even if couples do not agree, when I do this exercise of empathy in our counseling sessions with couples that come in, even if they still disagree on issues, they go away feeling validated if there is empathy shown by their partner. So we're going to do another role play at this time where we're going to demonstrate what that looks like. So Denise, why don't you start again? So you're going to start and then I'm going to respond to it, showing empathy.
Oh, Michael, I can't believe you forgot our anniversary again. It feels like you don't even care about our relationship.
I understand why you're so upset, and I'm truly sorry for forgetting. It wasn't intentional, Denise, and I know how important our anniversary is to you. I messed up, and I take full responsibility for that.
It's just frustrating because it feels like you don't prioritize our relationship.
I hear you, and I understand why you feel that way. However, I just want you to know that I do prioritize our relationship, and I am committed to making it right. Why don't we sit down, Denise, and let us plan something so we can celebrate that special occasion. And I'll make sure that from now on, I am mindful of our anniversary because I don't want to put you through this pain again.
Well, thank you for understanding, Michael.
So that's an example of showing empathy. And again, when things like this happen in relationship, we tend to go to defensiveness instead of showing empathy to what the pain the other person is feeling.
So as Colossians 3:12 says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience.
And 1 Peter 3 verse 8 tells us also that finally all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. So being like-minded doesn't necessarily mean that you fully agree with the other person, but you can understand the other person's mind. You can understand where they're coming from and make them feel understood. So be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, and be compassionate to each other.
Well, Romans 12:15 also says, rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn.
And yes, when we dismiss each other's feeling, we are not showing that we understand their pain and we are mourning with them. We are making them feel as if their pain isn't warranted.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for this insightful discussion on Lesson in Couples Communication Part 1. And thanks to all of you who joined us today on this episode of the Life Transformation Show. Don't miss next week's episode where we'll be covering Part 2. So if you missed any part of today's show or want to revisit it, you can find the episode posted on ElimCounselling Services YouTube channel. Just search for Life Transformation and subscribe to stay updated on all our latest content. You can find out more about us at ElimCounselingMinistry.com.
So until next time, this is your host, Michael Hart of ElimCounselling Services.
And your co-host, Denise Hart.
Praying together that God would bless you in all your relationships and keep you sound in mind and pure in heart.